Ridge Academy began each morning with a rhythm of clockwork. At precisely 8 o'clock sharp, the heavy echo of gunfire rolled down the long concrete hallways of the indoor range, a sound that blended into the identity of the place itself, a sound that told every visitor this was not a playground, but a crucible of discipline and practice. Seasoned marksmen filled the lanes with the confidence of years, moving through their well-rehearsed rituals, loading magazines with swift precision, checking scopes under the fluorescent glare, and firing tight clusters into the targets until they resembled a single dark hole. This was a hierarchy of skill where each shooter held an unspoken rank determined not by title, but by ability. Everyone fit neatly into this hierarchy, everyone except Sophia. Sophia did not carry a membership card stamped with years of renewal stickers. Her name never appeared on competition rosters or league leaderboards pinned to the bulletin boards. She had no reputation within the community and no history attached to her presence. She simply arrived 3 mornings each week, paid her fee in quiet cash, and made her way to Lane 12, the farthest lane from the entrance, a place often reserved for beginners. The regulars had created a kind of ecosystem inside Thunder Ridge. John, a broad-shouldered construction foreman who had been competing for more than 15 years, always claimed the central lanes, his rifle gleaming with carefully chosen attachments calibrated to perfection. He moved with the confidence of a man who had earned victories and scars in equal measure. Near him was Robert, known among them as sharp-eyed and steady, a retired police marksman whose collection of precision rifles gleamed like trophies. His jacket bore the patches of competitions from across 3 states, each one proof of his skill and discipline. Michael represented a younger generation, barely past college age. His gear cost more than most people's rent, his education largely formed by online tutorials and endless hours spent studying ballistics on the internet. He carried himself with the eagerness of someone desperate to prove he belonged, and his words often spilled faster than his skills could back them up. Then there was David, a quiet presence who carried himself differently from the rest. His credibility came from decades as an Air Force crew chief. His equipment was practical, his approach calm, and his words carried the authority of lived service. When he spoke, the others listened, and his silence carried even more weight. Overseeing them all was Emma, the safety officer, her eyes sharp and unyielding. She had seen every kind of shooter enter those doors. First-timers clutching their rentals with shaking hands, arrogant amateurs whose recklessness turned them into risks, and masters who made the art look effortless. She could gauge skill with a glance, recognizing who needed guidance and who required watching. Into this carefully balanced world stepped Sophia. She first appeared 3 months earlier on an ordinary Tuesday morning, her movements hesitant, her questions marking her as a newcomer. She asked Emma for a simple pistol, something basic, claiming she was only learning. Her attire was plain, jeans and a sweater, more like an office worker than someone who belonged on a firing line. Her hands bore no calluses. Her manner carried no sign of long familiarity with firearms. Emma prepared the rental pistol for her, a standard 9mm Glock, and began the safety briefing she had given countless times. But something about Sophia caught her attention. While her stance was awkward, her grip inconsistent, her shots scattered, her awareness of safety was unusually sharp. She never swept the muzzle across unsafe areas, never touched the trigger until ready to fire, never ignored the safety protocol when setting the weapon down. These habits usually required weeks of correction, yet Sophia displayed them from the start. To the others, she looked like any other beginner. John commented on how some people simply lacked natural ability. Michael offered advice she accepted politely, but never seemed to apply. Robert noticed something strange. Her fundamentals were oddly solid, even though her accuracy lagged behind. David remained silent, watching her carefully, reminded of soldiers he had once known who carried invisible injuries or burdens that slowed their progress. Week after week she returned, always to Lane 12, always renting the same pistol, always buying the cheapest ammunition. Her results remained inconsistent, her shots wandering across the paper in broad groups, her draw deliberate and slow, her improvement minimal. To the community, she became a curiosity, To some an object of mockery, to Emma a puzzle. There were small details that unsettled Emma. Sophia's way of cleaning the pistol suggested muscle memory deeper than 3 months of practice. Her questions, though basic, always targeted specific aspects of technique, as if she knew where the weak points truly lay. She watched the others with an intensity that seemed analytical rather than casual, her attention sharpening whenever military experiences were mentioned. For the regulars, she blended into the background, present but unremarkable, persistent yet unimpressive. No one suspected that her quiet persistence concealed something more. No one realized the truths that waited beneath the surface, truths that would change not only how they saw Sophia, but how they understood skill itself. The stage was set for revelations, the kind that arrive quietly but alter everything. And it began with Sophia stepping once more into lane 12, her back straight, her hands steady, her eyes carrying burdens no one yet understood. The morning at Thunder Ridge often carried a rhythm that felt sacred to its regulars, a ritual of routine where every shooter fell into patterns that mirrored discipline itself. John arrived early as always, claiming his favorite lane with the quiet dominance of someone who believed the center belonged to him. He polished the scope of his rifle under the cold fluorescent light, movements sharp and precise. Every piece of gear laid out like tools in a craftsman's shop. Robert was already present, seated at his bench, cleaning the long barrel of a rifle that looked more like a surgical instrument than a weapon. The morning light slanted through the high windows, striking the polished glass of his scope and scattering faint rainbows on the concrete floor. Robert's hands moved slowly but surely, the repetition of a man who had done this thousands of times, his mind steady, his body calm. Michael entered with all the enthusiasm of youth, dragging behind him a hard case that gleamed with brand-new purchases. His excitement filled the room like static, always eager to tell others about his latest achievement, his latest video, his latest discovery about bullet trajectory or wind drift. His words poured forth long before he even placed his weapon on the bench. David arrived with less fanfare, his quiet nods serving as both greeting and acknowledgement. He set down his weathered range bag, its corners frayed, its zippers worn from years of use, and yet inside everything was arranged with careful discipline, a reminder that true experience spoke not through flash but through order and efficiency. Emma began her morning routine of inspections, moving through each lane like a guardian, her eyes sharp for brass casings left behind or safety oversights that might spell danger. Her presence was the unseen spine of the place, the assurance that every person inside Thunder Ridge would leave as safe as they had arrived. At precisely 9:15, Sophia entered, her timing so exact that John muttered under his breath about how predictable she was becoming. He claimed it irritated him, though the truth was less about her arrival and more about what she represented, the persistence of someone who had no results yet refused to quit. He saw it as wasteful, an insult to what he believed were natural gifts that only some possessed. Sophia approached the counter with her customary politeness, her request unchanged, the same rental Glock, the same inexpensive ammunition. Emma handed it over with her usual measured calm, watching Sophia's eyes for signs of fatigue, watching the subtle tremor in her left hand that she had noticed more than once. John leaned toward Robert as Sophia moved to her lane. "See our resident beginner. 3 months in, and she still looks like it is her first day." Robert did not smile, though he gave a faint nod, his eyes lingering on Sophia with something more complicated than dismissal. He too wondered why her form appeared correct while her results defied progress. Michael chimed in with youthful certainty. Maybe she should try a smaller caliber. Maybe she should take lessons. Maybe she's practicing mistakes and engraving them in a habit. His words spilled like water, eager to display knowledge, but lacking the patience to understand depth. David listened quietly, his expression unreadable. But when he glanced toward Sophia, he noticed the way she stood, her posture deliberate, her breathing measured, her every movement as careful as a soldier revisiting old drills. He felt the stir of recognition, but said nothing. Sophia took her place at lane 12, her process unchanging, loading magazines slowly, checking her stance again and again. aiming with intense concentration. To an outside observer, it looked like effort without improvement. To those who watch her regularly, it looked like stagnation. The first shots echoed across the range, sharp cracks that left holes scattered across the paper target like snowflakes in no particular pattern. John gestured with irritation. That is not progress. That is a plateau. Some people just are not cut out for this. Natural ability cannot be taught. You either have it or you do not. Michael nodded quickly, his youth quick to absorb the certainty of John's words. Not everyone is meant to shoot. Maybe she should pick a different hobby. Robert frowned, his voice quieter. She has persistence, though. That counts for something. It takes character to come back day after day when the results do not show. John dismissed the remark with a shrug. Character does not put bullets in the center, he said, leaning back with the casual arrogance of someone who believed he had cracked life's secrets. Sophia said nothing, though her shoulders straightened slightly. The words reached her as surely as the report of gunfire. Her silence was her shield, her calm politeness the armor she wore against judgment. But deep within the words weighed heavy, each comment piling atop burdens invisible to those around her. Emma, watching from her post, felt irritation tighten in her chest. She valued responsibility above raw talent, and Sophia embodied responsibility, never once breaking a rule, never once creating risk. Her presence was steady, her respect for the space and the tools absolute. To Emma, that meant more than tight clusters on a paper target. As Sophia fired another string, Emma noticed something the others missed. Her reloads were perfect. Her breathing now matched the cadence of practice control. Her trigger discipline was impeccable, the signs of someone who had drilled these fundamentals long before arriving at Thunder Ridge. Yet her accuracy remained scattered, a contradiction that gnawed at Emma's instincts. David, too, noticed, his sharp eye catching the faint shift in Sophia's stance, the way she absorbed criticism in silence, the way her jaw tightened only slightly. He had seen soldiers do the same, choosing not to answer, choosing to carry judgment quietly because they were fighting a different battle altogether. The session wound down. Sophia packed her gear with the same deliberate care, each item placed with quiet precision. Her range bag organized like a kit meant for more than casual hobby. She nodded politely to those who glanced her way and made her exit with the same silence with which she had arrived. Behind her, whispers of doubt lingered, John muttering that she had no potential, Michael shrugging that some people simply lack the gift, Robert uneasy but saying little, David lost in thought, Emma watching the door with the suspicion that what she had just witnessed was not the struggle of the beginner, but the disguise of something much deeper. And so Sophia left Thunder Ridge that day, carrying with her the weight of unseen battles, and leaving behind a community that believed they had her figured out, unaware that they had seen only the surface of a story that was about to change everything they thought they knew about persistence, skill, and the unseen strength of those who fight their battles in silence. Thursday morning arrived with a chill in the air. The concrete walls of Thunder Ridge seemed to hold the cold and press it into the skin of everyone who entered. The shooters came in, as usual, John boasting about his latest match scores, Robert steady as a stone as he cleaned his rifle with patient hands, Michael buzzing with excitement as he prepared his camera for another round of filming his progress, David quiet and watchful, his presence grounding the energy around him, Emma checking lanes, with the same sharp eyes that had already saved countless accidents before they ever happened. At exactly 9:15, Sophia entered, her arrival as precise as always. Yet today there was something different. David noticed it first, a faint tremor in her left hand as she signed the waiver at the counter, small but unmistakable to someone trained to notice details. Emma watched her too, noting the tiredness in her eyes, the smile that did not quite reach, the heaviness of someone who had carried a long week on her shoulders. John smirked when he saw her. Rough night, maybe, he called out in mock sympathy. Maybe stick to coffee until you're steady. His words cut the air like splinters. Sophia gave no reply, but David saw the subtle tightening of her jaw, the quiet strength of someone used to swallowing words. Her silence spoke louder than any defense. She moved to lane 12, began her methodical routine, loading slowly, checking her stance again and again, but the tremor remained, her grip less stable, her breathing measured yet strained. Frustration showed in the set of her shoulders, the careful control of someone fighting her own body. Robert paused in his preparation, his trained eye taking in her stance. Her form was textbook perfect, every alignment correct, her support hand where it should be, her feet placed exactly, yet the bullets still scattered across the paper in wild patterns. It made no sense to him. Beginners usually fail because their form was broken, yet Sophia's form was flawless. Michael watched too, shaking his head. "I do not get it," he muttered. "How can someone have perfect form and still shoot like that?" Usually it is the other way around. Form develops slowly, but accuracy improves faster. John gave his answer with confidence. "She is overthinking," he said, "trying too hard. You cannot think your way to being a shooter. It is instinct, and if you do not have it, no amount of practice will save you." But David shook his head quietly, his years in uniform telling him something else. Beginners do not overthink. They barely think at all. They just try to remember the basics. Sophia's movements were not the fumbling of a beginner. They were the cautious precision of someone trying to recall what they once knew, like a soldier relearning how to walk after an injury. Emma paid close attention to Sophia's safety handling. Every motion automatic, every reload exact. Even with the tremor, she never broke a single rule. Her muzzle discipline flawless. Her trigger control instinctive. These were not learned behaviors from 3 months of practice. These were ingrained habits from long before she ever stepped into Thunder Ridge. The truth became clearer when Michael accidentally dropped a loaded magazine. The cartridges scattered across the concrete floor with a metallic clatter that startled the others. Sophia reacted instantly. Her weapon cleared, safety engaged, her eyes scanning the range for any sign of risk, her movements efficient, practiced without hesitation. "Nice reflexes," David murmured, watching with recognition. "Those are the reflexes of someone trained for emergencies, not a casual shooter." Sophia met his eyes briefly, and in that flicker he saw the weight she carried. Her reply was calm, just being careful, but her tone carried layers he recognized, the careful words of someone guarding truths they could not reveal. As the session went on, her tremor worsened, making reloads harder. Her jaw clenched with quiet frustration, not at the equipment, but at her own body. She whispered almost without meaning to, "Some days the body does not cooperate with what the mind remembers." Her words fell heavy in the air, and David and Robert exchanged a glance. They knew what that meant. It meant she had once known far more than she let on. Emma noticed too, her observations piecing together into a pattern. Sophia's organization, her flawless safety, her ingrained posture, the military edge to her awareness. She was beginning to see through the facade. John, however, refused to bend. 3.5 months, and she is still asking about sight alignment. He said loudly enough for all to hear, "Some people are simply not meant to be shooters. Better she face that now." His words struck Sophia like stones. Her shoulders stiffened, but again she said nothing, carrying it as she carried every doubt they threw at her. As she packed her gear at the end of the session, Emma noticed the precision with which Sophia arranged her equipment. Every item placed deliberately, her range bag more like a soldier's kit than hobbyists. Even her steps as she left carried a strange measure, careful, controlled, as if compensating for balance issues, the kind that hinted at old injuries invisible to casual eyes. David watched her leave and felt the pieces beginning to align. This was not a beginner at all. This was someone who had once been a professional, someone whose body no longer matched the sharpness of her training, someone relearning under the weight of hidden scars. Sophia walked out of Thunder Ridge that morning under the weight of judgment and misunderstanding, but also under the quiet watch of those who were beginning to see, though they could not yet name it, that her story was not about failure, but about survival, not about lacking talent, but about fighting unseen battles that most would never comprehend. Saturday morning broke differently. The air inside Thunder Ridge felt heavier. Anticipation laced the quiet halls long before the gunfire began. David arrived earlier than usual. His curiosity had refused him sleep, his mind circling around Sophia's words and the tremor he had seen in her hands. Something was not adding up, and after 20 years in the service, his instincts told him she carried truths hidden beneath her silence. He found Emma already at her desk, preparing paperwork. Her face calm, but her movements sharper than normal. David sat beside her, his voice low. "Something is not right about Sophia," he said. "Her weapon handling is too perfect, her safety too automatic. That tremor is not nerves. It is neurological." Emma paused. The words struck her like the missing piece of a puzzle. She had noticed the same inconsistencies, but had not strung them into a picture. Now she began to see it. Sophia's struggle was not from inexperience, it was something far more complex. Before they could speak further, John entered, his presence carrying the same loud confidence as always, gear slung over his shoulder, grinning at the sight of the two in deep conversation. "What is this morning strategy session? Planning to tell our persistent beginner she might be better off with pottery classes," he joked. David's expression hardened. "Or maybe we are wondering why someone with flawless fundamentals still struggles with accuracy. Maybe we are wondering what we are not seeing." His calm words planted doubt even in John, who dismissed them outwardly, but found himself watching Sophia more carefully when she arrived. At 9:15 the door opened, and Sophia entered with her usual calm step. Yet the atmosphere had shifted. Today, eyes followed her not with casual dismissal, but with sharp curiosity. Emma handed her the pistol as always, her voice soft, asking if the tremor was any better. Sophia paused just long enough for the hesitation to show before replying. "Some days are better than others." Her words guarded, her smile thin. Robert observed closely as she set up her lane, noting her organizational discipline, the way she checked her ammunition for imperfections, the way her range bag was arranged with tactical efficiency rather than casual habit. He knew these were not signs of a hobbyist. These were habits of a professional. Michael entered with his usual enthusiasm, carrying his camera, but his energy carried a new edge. The night before he had reviewed footage from his recordings, slowing Sophia's movements frame by frame. What he saw unsettled him. Her grip was perfect, her breathing matched military instruction, her reloads competition grade, yet her bullets scattered as if she had never fired before. Today he came not only to film himself, but to watch her with focused attention. As Sophia fired her first string, the contradiction was once again clear, her stance flawless, her trigger pull smooth, her sight picture steady, yet her shots scattered in a wide grouping. Robert leaned closer to David. "The fundamentals are perfect. I have trained recruits for years who did not have her foundation. This is not the struggle of a novice." David nodded. "It is muscle memory," he said. "You do not get that from a few months of practice. This is someone who has drilled thousands of times." Michael's camera captured her in slow detail, the way she instinctively scanned the range between strings, checking positions, noting exits, observing others without seeming to. It was situational awareness, not casual but professional. Michael muttered under his breath, "She moves like someone who has done this before a lot." The others were beginning to see it too. Even John, though he fought the recognition, his certainty about natural talent colliding with evidence he could no longer ignore. Sophia continued her practice, the tremor in her hand worsening as the session wore on. She fumbled a magazine once, and her jaw tightened with frustration. She whispered under her breath words not meant for others. "Some days the body will not follow what the mind remembers," David heard, and his chest tightened. That was the confession of someone fighting a battle against their own limits. Finally, Robert asked her directly during a pause, military, his voice steady. Sophia hesitated for a fraction too long before shaking her head. "No, just learning." Her denial was too smooth, too deliberate. David caught the shift in her posture, the straightening of spine, trained to stand at attention. Emma caught it too, the subtle defense of someone hiding from the truth. The range fell quieter around her, as the realization spread like a ripple. Sophia was not who she appeared to be. She was not a lost beginner stumbling at the fundamentals. She was someone returning from a past she could not share, someone relearning with a body that no longer obeyed the memory of perfect training. Her silence was breaking, though not with words, but with the truth carried in every movement, in the way she packed her gear with military precision, in the way her gaze scanned the room for threats no one else saw, in the way her frustration was directed not at the target, but at her own betraying hand. When she left that day, shoulders squared, jaw set, the others remained behind, unsettled, their casual judgments shattered. Even John stood in silence, the certainty of his arrogance cracked by what he had witnessed. David watched her walk out, her steps measured as if compensating for balance. And in that moment, the picture became clear. She was not learning to shoot. She was relearning. She was a warrior returning to skills once mastered, but now hindered by wounds unseen. Her persistence was not stubbornness. It was survival. Her silence was not ignorance. It was dignity. The truth was beginning to surface. And with it came a shift in how every shooter at Thunder Ridge would see not only Sophia, but themselves, for she carried within her the story of battles fought beyond their understanding. And the revelation was only just beginning. Tuesday morning arrived with a weight of expectation. The shooters gathered at Thunder Ridge, unaware that the day would carve itself into memory. Major Hayes, the Academy owner, made an announcement that sent a ripple of excitement through the building. Today, a special guest would be joining them. Daniel, a recently retired Navy instructor known for his years in elite units, would conduct an advanced assessment. His reputation preceded him, and even the most confident shooters felt a shiver of nervous energy at the thought of being observed by someone of his caliber. John could barely contain his eagerness. Adjusting his equipment with extra care, this was the kind of opportunity he believed would validate his status. Robert felt a steadier anticipation, the chance to test his own discipline against the eye of someone who lived combat. Michael nearly vibrated with energy, already planning how to turn this into content for his online following. David remained calm, curious not for himself, but for how Daniel might view Sophia. Emma tightened her protocols, determined the range would show nothing but the highest standard under such scrutiny. Sophia entered at her usual time, her presence steady, her politeness unchanged. She asked for her usual rental, the same Glock, the same inexpensive ammunition. She showed no outward interest in the guest instructor, though others found it odd, who would not want the attention of a man like Daniel. When Daniel arrived, he carried no need for show. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who did not need to prove himself. His eyes scanned the room with professional precision, cataloging equipment, observing posture, noting the smallest details. Major Hayes introduced him proudly, and he greeted the shooters with polite efficiency, telling them to continue their routines as normal, for he wanted to see them as they truly were. John exaggerated his precision, each movement slowed and stylized. Michael offered commentary on his gear in hopes of impressing. Even Robert found himself second-guessing his rhythm. But Sophia remained unchanged, her preparation as methodical as ever, her focus steady. Daniel began his observations, moving lane to lane, his words precise, his critiques measured. He nodded at John's control, though noted his performance leaned toward competition rather than tactical utility. He discussed real-world application with Robert, pointing out the differences between law enforcement scenarios and combat training. He gave Michael patient corrections, gently separating enthusiasm from reality. With David, he spoke in shorthand, two veterans understanding one another, without need for explanation. All the while, his peripheral vision noted Sophia, her scattered targets visible from a distance, her stance unbroken, her breathing measured. The contradiction stirred his instincts. During Robert's assessment, something caught his attention. Sophia's breathing pattern, the 4-count inhale, the controlled pause, the extended exhale. It was unmistakable, the breathing rhythm of sniper training, something that could not be imitated casually. He turned his attention to her without hurry, moving casually toward lane 12. The others watched, curious, expecting perhaps he would confirm her as the hopeless beginner they believed her to be. Instead, Daniel studied with quiet intensity, his eyes taking in every detail, her grip flawless, her sight picture correct, her trigger control smooth, her awareness extending beyond her lane to the environment around her. Her shots, however, scattered once again, missing the center, appearing random to those who measure progress only by holes in paper. But Daniel saw differently. He saw the muscle memory in the way she pressed the trigger, the perfection of natural point of aim that only came from thousands of repetitions, the ingrained scanning of the range between strings, habits drilled into soldiers who understood survival depended on awareness. He drew closer, speaking softly, noting her breathing, his tone neutral, yet carrying undertones only another trained warrior would recognize. Sophia faltered for just a moment, her rhythm breaking, her eyes flicking to his with the guarded awareness of someone whose cover had been questioned. She tried to explain simply, saying she was just keeping calm, but the weight in her voice betrayed the truth. Daniel continued to observe, watching the way she managed recoil, the way she reloaded without wasted motion, the way she instinctively assessed when a sudden noise rang out from Michael's dropped bag, her weapon lowered safely, her attention turning sharply toward the disturbance, her movements fluid, automatic, undeniably professional. That moment confirmed what Daniel already suspected. Sophia was no beginner. She was a veteran, a warrior relearning under the strain of a body no longer whole. He asked quietly, his tone carrying respect. Marine Corps. She hesitated, shook her head, denying, saying only civilian. But her body betrayed her, her posture straightened, her expression carefully neutral, the signs unmistakable to his trained eye. Army Special Forces, he said firmly, not as a question, but as fact. Sophia froze, her weapon lowered, her stance shifting, her eyes meeting his directly, the silence stretched heavy, every shooter around them unaware of the weight passing between them. Until finally she spoke, her voice low, carrying the burden of truth. Ranger Regiment, 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. The range fell in his silence. The air itself seemed to pause. Her admission explained everything. The perfect fundamentals, the flawless safety, the scattered shots. She continued, an IED attack, traumatic brain injury, inner ear damage, coordination loss. Lucky to be walking. Her words simple, yet heavier than stone. For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. Then he stepped back, and with solemn precision, he raised his hand in salute, a gesture carrying the full weight of respect from one warrior to another. The entire range froze. Conversation stopped. Gunfire halted. Every eye turned to see the exchange. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Slowly she set her pistol down, raised her hand, and returned the salute with the crispness burned into her by years of service. It lasted only seconds, but it echoed louder than gunfire, heavier than any competition trophy. It was recognition, it was respect, it was the honoring of a warrior who had been fighting unseen. When their hands lowered, the air at Thunder Ridge had changed. John stood speechless, his arrogance cracked. Robert's respect deepened. Michael's youthful enthusiasm sobered into awe. David's quiet understanding finally shared with all. Emma's sharp eyes softened, for she had seen the truth revealed. Sophia was no longer the outsider at Lane 12. She was a reminder that skill is more than accuracy on paper, that character is more than persistence, that behind every calm silence may lie battles fought and wounds carried. She was proof that the meaning of mastery lies not only in what the body can do, but in what the spirit endures. From that day forward, Thunder Ridge carried her presence differently, no longer as the beginner mocked for scattered shots, but as the veteran who had faced the fire and returned with strength forged through pain. Her story lived in the silence of Lane 12, a story of resilience, dignity, and the recognition that true warriors never lose what they once carried, even when their bodies betray them.